Bill Jasper with the New American Magazine in Las Vegas at the Heartland Institute's 9th International Conference on Climate Change, and I'm very honored to have with me right now Dr. Arthur Robinson. Art, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Longtime friend. I was out to your Oregon Institute of Science and Medicine a few years ago. He is a biochemist, head of and founder of the Oregon Institute of Science and Medicine, author and editor of the Access to Energy newsletter, very important source of information on energy and technology. And congratulations, you received an award yesterday or today here at the conference. And you have played a very important role, in you and Dr. Willie Soon and a few of the others, Dr. Fred Seitz, on a important issue concerning global warming with your petition project. And why don't you just explain that to the viewers? Many of our readers already know about it, but what does that? What did that do, and what doesn't it do?
It did one thing. The opposition, the people who are pushing this human-caused global warming thing, came in. We became interested in it or active about 1997. They came in basically with the claim that human use of hydrocarbon fuels was going to destroy the planet in the ways they described, and that there was no need to discuss the science because there was a consensus of all scientists that agreed with them. It was just a scientific consensus. It was all done deal. The science was done. And so their program was threefold. There's a consensus in favor of them. They are on white horses of idealism, wanting to save the planet, and anyone who opposed them was on a black horse of commercialism, trying to destroy the planet for profit. That was their position. Of course, they were wrong on the science, but as long as they could convince people there was a consensus of scientists in their favor and not discuss the science, they had an edge. And what we did was to demonstrate they had no consensus. We basically, first we spent many, many months writing a definitive review article on the subject, which showed the facts.
Review of the evidence on alleged global warming.
Of the science, yeah. And the hypothesis they're pushing was discarded long ago. There are a lot of facts on this subject which clearly invalidate what they say. That's clear. But we had to make that clear, and to do that, we had to read the entire research literature and make sure we were right, which we did. We wrote a review article, and then we started circulating a petition. And Dr. Seitz and Willie Soon and I and my colleagues. And we got 31,000 Americans who have university degrees in science to agree with us that the petition actually urged the government not to take action on this bogus hypothesis because there's no evidence hydrocarbons are harming the earth, and CO2 is actually making plants grow faster, so it's good for the plants.
And the policies that were being
advocated
at that
time
being
was
destructive.
The policies then were the Kyoto policies.
Right.
And so we demonstrated there was no consensus because we got 31,000 Americans with degrees in science to take an opposite position. That was all. You don't do science by polling. We didn't find out what the facts were by a poll. We just got a large fraction of American scientists to say, no, we don't agree with this. That meant there was no consensus on their side, and it forced them into more of a scientific debate. Now, they don't debate scientifically. They debate by assertion. They tend to ignore the facts, brush them aside. They have to because the facts are not on their side. As you could see from the presentations at your meeting, this, as far as a scientific subject, is a closed subject. There's overwhelming evidence that negates the hypothesis that humans are significantly warming the earth. There's no question about it. But it's a political question because they're still claiming to the public that they are. And they still are arguing that the scientists are on their side. But our petition contained not only a lot more scientists than have ever expressed an interest on their side, but enough specialists in the field to even overcome their percentages in that field. It's not hard for them to get some scientists to push their side because there is literally billions of dollars of research funds for anyone who will favor that side. But what we did was demonstrate there was no consensus. And that has is still bothering the agenda of the warmers because it's still hurting them.
Right. They, as in many of these areas of so-called environmental science, it takes oftentimes years or even decades for the real scientists who don't have the funding and a big political backing behind them to catch up and discredit the false reports.
Yeah.
That are being
And
put
this
forward.
area is very dangerous because they want to cut off humanity's use of hydrocarbons. And hydrocarbon fuels are fueling most of the technology of the world. So if you reduce hydrocarbon fuels, you actually kill people by the millions.
You consign people that are particularly in the very impoverished parts of the
That's
world
right.
to continued poverty,
You
and it's going to gradually impoverish
You
us.
still have people, billions of people, who are trying to lift themselves from poverty and tyranny. They can only do so with technology, and that technology runs on hydrocarbons. Even if you had a new technology that could replace it, and in fact we do in nuclear power, but they work to suppress that as well, it would take a long time to change. So if you tell the people of Africa to use less hydrocarbons, you're telling them to have less people, and they have less people, people have to die. It's very, very, very serious. So they're trying to gain power over the energy system in this human-caused global warming scam, basically, and they have to be stopped. But as I'm sure you, a New American, understand, this is just one element in the battle to preserve our constitutional republic. And that battle has not been going too well for us lately, but we can still win if we work very hard. Negating science, relegating science to the support of a false hypothesis and managing to succeed at it is one of their goals. If you can pervert science, science can't do everything. People think scientists know more than they do. But it is a very powerful method, and in combination with engineering has greatly advanced our civilization. People respect this, and so when they go out there and claim that science is with them and that we have to stop using hydrocarbons, they manage to fool a lot of people.
They
But
are
the battle-
co-opting
yeah,
science.
But the battle, this is one element of the battle in trying to maintain, basically preserve our civilization. And if they can succeed in irrationalism and lies, and can discredit science in this way, and use science in a discreditable way, that is one victory for them in this larger battle. And it's been pretty hard because 50 years ago, about 50 years ago, the government co-opted this funding of science in the country. And as one of your speakers pointed out, when Eisenhower warned against the military-industrial complex, he also warned about money to academia.
Right.
And the money in academia has changed things a lot. When I was a young scientist starting out, nearly everybody in science was a conservative individual, and now a large fraction are liberal because they've been getting government money for 50 years.
Right.
But anyway, it works. For whatever reason, we're at a point where people not telling the truth about science and other things are endangering our civilization. So we're all working to protect that, just as you are. Mm-hmm. And in this global warming issue, they lied, and they've made a lot of traction. And those principal scientists on the other side, many of them were at this meeting, have shown that they are not telling the truth. That's step one. Step two is getting the public to understand that that's the case.
And that is encouraging as well. The many scientists that have come here, many more of them are speaking out publicly. Mm-hmm. Many more of them are taking a stand. When we began in this fight, back in the early 90s, there were very few scientists who we could go to get the kind of information that we have available.
And you see, it's the field of understanding the atmosphere, understanding the oceans, and so forth. As speakers here indicated, this is a huge field. It'll be centuries before we really understand these problems. They're exciting, they're interesting, you work on them, you have a whole life of fun studying them, learning little things about the environment. But in fact, these are huge problems. And when someone comes in and says, oh, we understand them entirely, and we know what's going to happen in 100 years, it'll be a disaster unless you give us power and give us money, and claim the mantle of science, they can be very dangerous. Because a real scientist stands up and he says, well, I don't understand these problems, we only know a little bit. And they say, well, we know it all.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you? So politically, you have the difference between a politician who goes out and says, you know, I really don't know how to solve this immigration problem. It's a tough problem. I really feel everyone should be acting charitably, those who are trying to come and better themselves in the United States, and those that want to preserve the United States. It's a tough problem. I know the solution to. Tell the truth, which is what a scientist would do. When another guy comes along, he absolutely knows the answer.
Yeah.
And he's counted all the poll votes, and the polls say that if he comes down on one side of the issue today, he'll get elected. And that's one of the problems with the Democratic claim.
And with the politicizing.
So I don't mean to take a stand on immigration. I'm just pointing out that a scientist, if you ask a really fine climate scientist, and I work in another field, but I know a lot about this field, you ask a really fine one, he's going to say, well, we know this and this. There's a lot we don't know. I don't know what the temperature will be in 100 years. The other guys come along and say, oh, we're scientists, and we know what the temperature will be in 100 years. Unless you give us power and money and stop using hydrocarbons, it'll be terrible.
Yeah.
Argument by assertion, no facts. In fact, the facts we know about climate science show that the guy's not telling the truth, but there you are. Yeah. And so it's a very difficult situation. Our founders of our country anticipated this in many areas. That's why they gave us a constitutional republic. Our rights are protected. We're protected from the government. Then they said you can elect your officials democratically, but if they adhere to the Constitution, everything will be okay. And sure enough, it was for a couple hundred years. The United States provided a wonderful, free playing field on which many things could be invented and done. And it's a miracle of history what happened here in those 200 years. Why should you and I discuss how to produce America's energy? You're not an energy engineer. I'm not an energy engineer. All we should do is be delighted that the free market keeps giving us more energy at a lower cost. If we want to get in the energy business, and we learn a lot about it, we get in that competition. Instead, the popular press is full of telling the people, trying to convince them it should be done this way or that way. Because they're telling the people that they decide. Oh, just listen to the arguments. You decide whether we should stop nuclear power. You decide whether we should have no coal plants. Not the free market, not the competition. And the idea is now you're electing someone, not someone who will run a system of justice to keep fraud down, not someone who will run a system of government which will make everybody free to compete in this market to give us the best they can. Instead, we're running an election to decide who will decide which winners and which losers will be in the energy industry. And this is unconstitutional. And so this meeting, we're trying to convince the public that they shouldn't give power to these people who are lying to them. But in fact, it shouldn't be possible to give power to them.
Right.
So it's part of a much broader fight. And we've won the scientific fight. That's over. You can just watch the talk. But the political fight,
Yeah.
your people have been working on that for a long time.
Absolutely. Well.